Welcome to Lessons in Consciousness. This is part 4 of episode 5, where I'm going to keep talking about the location of consciousness. In this segment, I'm going to present another theory of consciousness called the quantum mind theory of consciousness. There are several different people out there that have contributed to this theory, but some of the main players are physicist Roger Penrose and anesthesiologist Stuart Hameroff. They collaborated on their theory in the 1990s and have recently updated it in 2013. Their theory, which is also known as orchestrated objective reduction, states that consciousness derives from quantum vibrations in microtubules in the brain. Now, what's a quantum vibration? Or, for that matter, what's a microtubule? Well, first, let's try to figure out what a quantum vibration is. Since the majority of people have little to no knowledge of quantum physics, let me give a little foundational information. Now, most people know that everything is made of atoms. Also, many people know that atoms are made of even tinier things called electrons, neutrons, and protons, which are known as quantum particles. Of course, protons and neutrons are made up of even smaller quantum particles, but we won't get into that right now. Okay, what most people don't know is that these quantum particles aren't just particles. They're local vibrations within universal fields. And this idea of universal fields is part of the well-accepted standard model of quantum physics and is reinforced by the recent discovery of the Higgs boson at the Large Hadron Collider in Europe. So the best science in the world backs up this idea that quantum particles are simply local vibrations of universal fields. For example, an electron is a localized vibration within the electron field of the entire universe. Think of the electron universal field as a giant ocean of water the size of the universe, and the single electron is a local vibration of water within this giant ocean or electron field. Other quantum particles have their own universal fields in which they locally vibrate. Now, I know this is an oversimplification of a really complex subject, but it helps illustrate what a quantum vibration is. So, we know that quantum particles are vibrations on a local level within their own unique universal field. Now, what's a microtubule? Well, simply put, it's essentially a tiny protein polymer located inside the nerves in the brain. Now, theoretically, these quantum vibrations inside these microtubules have an influence in space-time geometry and give rise to consciousness. As far as I know, Penrose and Hameroff don't connect this idea to a consciousness that is outside of the brain, but I do. Since we know that quantum particles are also local vibrations within universal fields, it makes sense that they could possibly connect human thought to an external mind outside of the brain. Now, some research that reinforces the idea that quantum processes are at work in the brain is research with transcranial ultrasound. This ultrasound is very similar to the ultrasound that healthcare providers use to image babies in mothers' wombs. What they do is they place the ultrasound wand on a person's head, and this creates vibrations that theoretically resonate with the local vibrations of quantum particles in the brain. This has actually been shown to have a distinct effect on how people feel, like improving their mood, etc. So, this quantum mind theory might be another piece of the puzzle that shows that consciousness is located outside of the brain, and the brain is simply an interface or reducing valve for consciousness, kind of like your computer is for the internet. Okay, that's plenty of food for thought for this segment. In the next segment, I'll try to wrap up the topic of location of consciousness so we can move on to some really mind-blowing stuff. I'm Dr. Bruce King, and you've been watching Lessons in Consciousness. Okay, everybody, we're supposed to be going live right now. Appreciate everybody joining me. take these out of my ears because of the delay in the sound. So obviously we have a little bit of technical difficulties going on tonight, so I apologize for that. We wanted to show the video for you, the part 4 of the Location of Consciousness video. And I'm going to go ahead and talk about it even though I don't have the video. Okay? So because we're supposed to be going, it's 8 o'clock, it's Wednesday night, and I'm going to talk about this stuff even if nobody's here and the technical producer's not here. It's just me and one other person, I guess. I don't know who the other person is because they're not in the chat window. But I'm going to just talk about what I spent the time making the video for. And essentially, I don't have the video queued up because I don't know how to do that, but I can talk about the video. So that's what I'm going to do. Now, essentially, the thesis statement that I have for this particular segment is really that consciousness is all really just the imagination of pure consciousness, and that, or reality rather, is the imagination of your pure consciousness, and that quantum fields in the quantum field theory may be pure consciousness. Okay, that's my thesis statement. And that's the reason why I presented the quantum mind theory and location of consciousness episodes, is because of that. I believe reality is the imagination of pure consciousness, and that quantum fields in the quantum field theory may be pure consciousness. I'm going to talk about that tonight. So let's get into that a little bit. Now, quantum mind is absolutely related to quantum field theory. Otherwise, it wouldn't be called quantum mind, right? Quantum field theory is related to all the fields, okay? Now, there's some guys named Stuart Hameroff and Roger Penrose who basically said that their theory within quantum mind is that these little quantum particles that are located within the microtubules in the brain are actually what is creating consciousness. Okay? Now, I don't actually agree with that, but I present that information in the video that we'll have to run sometime. Maybe we can run it in the archive. But I think that it's important to show, like they showed, that there's some type of quantum connection that's connected to consciousness, okay? Now, they don't necessarily connect their idea. They think that particles in the microtubules are creating consciousness, but I don't. I think it's connecting us to a greater field. Now, basically, in the quantum field theory, the reason that all the equations and the mathematics works is because they're basing the actions of quantum particles on the idea that they're local vibrations within universal fields. And I'm going to say this over and over again. I'm going to talk about universal fields because universal fields might be consciousness. And that's what I'm going to talk about. And universal fields are very scientific. And I want to present as much science as I can without being too confusing or going beyond what I understand, because I am not a quantum physicist. However, I think quantum physics may hold the answer to consciousness. Now, just going back to what Penrose and Hameroff said about the quantum mind and their theory is, there's a lot of biological aspects with their theory that they got wrong, okay? But that's how science works. You take a lot of early guesses, and then science either proves you right or proves you wrong. Now, there is a guy by the name of Henry Stapp, S-T-A-P-P, if you want to look that guy up. And what he says basically is that consciousness is determining what reality really is, and when it selects what to observe. Okay, that's what's creating reality, is consciousness. Now, this follows the classic quantum physics idea of the wave function collapse into a particle when it's observed. Now, if you're familiar with the double slit experiment, you'll know what I'm talking about. If you're not familiar with the double slit experiment, then I highly recommend you go online and look at some videos or read the Wikipedia explanation. But I'll briefly tell you, in the double slit experiment, they basically are sending one photon or electron through these two slits, okay, either or. And it's acts like a wave until it's observed, until you know which slit the electron or photon goes through. You don't know, you don't see it rather as a particle. You see it as a wave only. And then when you know which slit it goes through, you see it as a particle. So it shows that collapse of the wave to a particle is all about observation or a human perception. And that's what any quantum physicist would tell you, is that quantum physics is just as much about how we are perceiving reality as it is about reality. And that's an important note when we talk about consciousness. So anyway, my interpretation of all this is that consciousness is a fundamental component and not created by quantum particles like Hameroff and Penrose state. So in other words, Stapp is saying that consciousness is creating quantum particles, and Hameroff and Penrose are saying that quantum particles are creating consciousness. I'm going to side with Henry Stapp. I think that consciousness is the most fundamental force or phenomenon in the universe, and there's also another guy, a physicist, who agrees with that, and his name is Amit Goswami, and he wrote a book called The Self-Aware Universe, which you might want to look up. It's a very good book. Henry Stapp wrote a book called Mindful Universe, Quantum Mechanics and the Participating Observer. I could pull this up and show pictures of it, but that's not that important. And that book's probably kind of dry to read. You're better off reading Amit Goswami's book, The Self-Aware Universe, if you want to understand how consciousness is the most fundamental force or phenomenon in the universe, and that's what's creating everything. Now, the idea that consciousness is creating reality can be reinforced by going back and looking at the quantum field theory. Now, what we know is, for example, is that an electron is a local vibration within a universal field called the electron field. Now, what evidence is there that a universal electron field exists? Well, mainly it's because the math works, and they built these huge colliders. The Hadron Super Collider over in France is one of the things that proves that, yeah, there's these universal fields and that there's these particles or locally vibrating things in these fields. In fact, that's what they found with the Large Hadron Colliders when they say, oh, they found the Higgs boson or the God particle, whatever you want to call it. That's really not a particle at all. It's a local vibration within the Higgs field. That's what they did with the big colliders. They managed to cause a local vibration within the Higgs field. And that's what any quantum physicist would tell you. And what's the Higgs field? Well, any quantum physicist would tell you that knows what they're talking about is that it's an infinite universal field. It's everywhere. And as far as they know, it's infinite. So these infinite fields are what everything is created from. In fact, I'll read a quote from a guy named Don Lincoln. What he said is, what we think of as a particle is simply a vibration of its associated field, quote unquote. So that's pretty interesting. And Don Lincoln, who is this guy? Well, he's a particle physicist who actually graduated from Rice University, but he's one of the guys who's helping to discover or research the Higgs boson, the Higgs field. And he's done a lot. He's written hundreds of research papers. So he's one of the top guys in quantum physics right now, Don Lincoln. And here's another quote from him, just to show that I'm not making this stuff up about everything being made of fields. Here's what he says, quote, everything, and I mean everything, is just a consequence of many infinitely large fields vibrating. The entire universe is made of fields playing a vast subatomic symphony, unquote. So everything, he says, everything in the universe is made of these fields. So according to a really smart physicist at the top of his profession, these universal fields are what is the foundation of our reality. Now, what does this have to do with consciousness? Which is what I'm talking about here, right? Well, like I said before, maybe these fields that you see in quantum field theory are consciousness or a major aspect of consciousness. We may be getting close to what consciousness is when we start talking about these universal fields that have local vibrations or particles, if you want to call them that make up reality. Now, there's something called stochastic electrodynamics, something in that field called the zero-point energy field. And stochastic electrodynamics is just an offshoot of quantum field theory. And it works with their mathematical proofs. And now the proof of zero-point energy field is something called the Casimir effect, which I talked about in the last video. But I'll show it again. In fact, I'll put it on the screen. As you can see, here's a little picture of it. And what this is showing is that these waves are pushing the plates together. And what they do is they put these plates really close together so that the universal field, or the zero-point energy field, the shorter wavelengths within that field, or I'm sorry, the longer wavelengths within that field can't fit in between the plates that are real close together. So it cuts out some of those waves that are in the middle of those plates that are very close together, and there's more pressure on the outside. So it causes a pressure, and this has been proven over and over again experimentally that this is true. And this is one of the things that proves that there is a zero-point energy field. Okay, and you see it on shows like I think Stargate Atlantis has their ZP energy unit, their zero-point energy unit stuff. You see it a lot in science fiction, but it's actually true. There really is a zero-point energy field, and it might be related to consciousness. And if you're interested in this, go to online and you can look up Casimir effect, and you see how it's spelled in the lower corner there, Casimir. And there's other proofs actually that the Casimir effect is true, but I won't go into that right now. They're a little more complicated, involve sort of quantum physics math stuff. But the important thing for our discussion is that these energy fields do exist, and they're the basis for the existence of matter or stuff in our universe. Stuff like your body and your brain. Now, as far as this relates to quantum mind theory, well, the quantum particles and microtubules in your brain can theoretically talk to other quantum particles in the universe. And in future episodes, I'm going to talk about something called entanglement or quantum entanglement. You may have heard that term before. And some of you may know what that means, but basically it means that when quantum particles have interacted with each other, they can communicate with the particles they've interacted with instantly, no matter how far apart they are. In other words, if two quantum particles interact and that particle goes 1,000,000 light years over here, then whatever happens to this particle, it can communicate that to the particle that's 1,000,000 light years away instantly. That's pretty mind-blowing, because what that indicates is that they're not even really separated, that their separation is an illusion of our perception. And that gets back to one of the ideas within quantum physics that says that it's just as much about our perception of reality as it is about reality. So I think that's pretty interesting. Now, you combine this with the idea that there's these universal energy fields that are the basis of reality that might be pure consciousness, and you have a pretty good idea where I'm going with this in all the future episodes. That, like my thesis statement tonight, reality is all just the imagination of pure consciousness. Okay, I want to go back to the ocean analogy that I give. Now, replace the phrase universal fields with ocean of water. This will help you understand this idea. Everything within this ocean of water is also made of the same water that the ocean's made of. Okay, it just vibrates at different rates and connects up with other vibrations to make things. In fact, according to the theory by Hay, Shruita, and Puthoff, there's no such thing as matter, only energy interacting with other energy. Now, they basically prove this, in my opinion, in their scientific article called Inertia as a Zero-Point Energy Field Lorentz Force. Okay? And they basically show that that the basic property of matter, called inertia, comes from energy interacting with other energy of the zero-point energy field. So it's simply pure energy interacting with other pure energy that creates our reality. There really is no such thing as matter. That's our perception of the energy. Our energy is perceiving that energy as matter, or our bodies as matter. And that's where we get confused. We consider our bodies to be ourself, when really our consciousness is creating our bodies. Now, granted, we have very limited consciousness in what we can understand or comprehend about that, but there's a greater consciousness that we are a subset of. And I'll get into that in future episodes so you can understand more about consciousness. This is obviously beyond what science can prove, what I'm telling you right now about consciousness, or our consciousness being a subset of a larger consciousness. I'm theorizing on that, okay? But there is a lot of hard science to back it up, and one of them is the universal fields within the quantum field theory. Okay, now in the video I mentioned that I wasn't able to run tonight, sorry, that Hameroff and Penrose did some experiments with pulsed ultrasound. Okay, in fact, I'll show that right now. I'll put that up on the screen. Here's what they did. You can see a picture of him here. Here's Stuart Hameroff with somebody holding a ultrasound gizmo to his head, and that's actually the same type of ultrasound that they use to image babies in the womb on mothers. You've probably seen them do that on TV, or maybe if you've seen it in person. And what they theorize with this is that the action or mechanism is that they're vibrating the particles within the microtubules in the brain. Now, they actually got a real physical effect when they did this. In fact, Stuart Hameroff reports that he felt like after about an hour, he felt like he was drunk or something, that he had a real relaxed feeling. And they've done some experiments with other people that showed that they definitely had a much more relaxed and very sedated kind of almost anesthetic type of effect by just putting this 8 megahertz pulsed ultrasound frequency on people's heads, like you see in the picture right there. So, that's pretty interesting. Now, don't try this at home. These guys, are experimenting on themselves. It's not going to hurt you because the ultrasound they use over babies doesn't heat up, unlike therapeutic ultrasound, which is totally different or much more intense. Now, here's the thing: this ultrasound, you can kind of relate this to the ultrasound to maybe the Earth's electromagnetic frequencies a little bit. Now, of course, ultrasound is sound waves, and the Earth's electromagnetic frequencies are electromagnetic. So they're two different types of vibrations, but they're still vibrations, and they both affect your brain. We know that. We know that the Earth's electromagnetic vibrations affect your brain waves. Experiments have shown that, and now we can see that ultrasound sound waves at 8 megahertz also affect that. So what's going on here? According to their theory, these sound waves are vibrating the quantum particles in your brain and having an effect. So, and what are quantum particles? Quantum particles are local vibrations within universal fields. So ultrasound is vibrating physically something else that's vibrating. So it's vibrating vibrations. Okay, I don't know. That's pretty weird, but that seems to be what's going on. Now, all of this to say that you can affect those electromagnetic vibrations in the microtubules in the brain by vibrating them. Okay, but you can also affect the brain and your thoughts and your mood with something called transcranial electromagnetic vibration. And also remember the last episode I believe was circumcerebral magnetic stimulation that I talked about. So you can affect that too. All right, now why are we talking about all this on a show playing on the Conscious Resistance Network? I mean, what has this got to do with changing the world for the better? Well, I would say the more you know about who and what you really are, the better decisions you'll be able to make on how to interact with your fellow humans and the nature of the universe in general. Now, after all, the way the world is going to change is for us to change the way we think, right? You might think that it's the world leaders that need to change. Well, and that would be true, but it's also you and I that need to change. We're on the front end of the snowplow, right? We're making a way for other people to follow. We have to go in the front and change ourselves by knowledge so other people can follow us. And you can take what you learned on the Conscious Resistance Network and other places and teach this knowledge to your friends, and they'll pass it on to others, right? They may modify it and make it even better than what I'm telling you, right? Or what you can tell them. They'll stand on the shoulders of you and I and see farther and more clearly than we can. And then future generations will stand on their shoulders, and so on until the world is a better place with peace, prosperity, love, harmony, all that hippie stuff, right? I mean, a better world is what we're trying to do here. We're trying to help create a better world, and we're on the front edge of that. Now, of course, we have to take care of ourselves and protect ourselves against some of the more mentally ill people that are out there to hurt other people. These people are sick. They're mentally ill. They don't know what they're doing. It's their ego that's driving it, right? They're like zombies. But I think zombies can heal. Zombies can awaken if they have the right knowledge. And that's why I'm giving this knowledge to you, especially the science knowledge, because that way you know it's factual. It's based on fact. It's not make-believe, airy-fairy, rainbow unicorn stuff. This is real hard scientific evidence that your consciousness is much more than what most people think as their ego identity. Okay, you're not your ego identity. That is just a mental construct, and most people are ruled by their mental constructs, and they're like zombies. They think that that's who they are. Now, there's a zombie movie I really like. I mean, it's kind of a cheesy, kind of silly movie. It's called Warm Bodies. And it's actually a zombie movie, kind of a zombie romance movie where this zombie guy and this regular human girl fall in love. And I'm going to spoil the movie for you. So this is a spoiler alert. If you haven't seen the movie, then sorry, I'm going to spoil it right now. What happens is the zombie in the movie heals himself through love. He stops becoming a zombie. He stops wanting to eat living people because of love. And I think that's a nice plot for a movie, because that's kind of what we're doing ourselves. We're helping people awaken from being zombies in the world through knowledge. And that's why I'm giving this scientific knowledge and all this quantum field information and all this crazy stuff to you, because that's what's going to change the world. And it's 8:24 right now, so I'm going to go ahead and just leave off. But I want to leave you with a Bill Hicks statement, because all this gets back to my thesis statement for tonight, which is that reality is just the imagination of our pure consciousness. And that's very similar to what Bill Hicks, the comedian, said. And he said, all matter is merely energy condensed to a slow vibration, that we are all one consciousness experiencing itself subjectively. There's no such thing as death. Life is only a dream, and we are the imagination of ourselves. Here's Tom with the weather. Anyway, that's an old Bill Hicks statement. And next week, I'm going to wrap up the Location of Consciousness episode and review everything we've been going over on this and move on to even more interesting stuff. So next week, I'm going to wrap up Location of Consciousness. So join me next week, and we'll finish up all the scientific evidence. I know it gets a little bit dry and boring. Bear with me. We're going to get into some paranormal stuff and all kinds of fun stuff. So hang in there. It's going to get more and more exciting. And don't forget to watch Derek Brose's show on Sunday night. And hopefully we'll get all this stuff archived and onto the ConsciousResistance.com website. So anybody who missed this show live tonight can see it then. All right, I'll see you guys next Wednesday. Thanks for joining us.